The sun was shining. The wedding garden was filled with white roses, golden ribbons, and smiling guests. Everyone was excited. The groom, David, stood at the front, dressed in a black suit. He looked nervous, but also happy. Today he was getting married to Melissa, a woman he had met 1 year ago. She was kind, beautiful, and had helped him heal after his wife passed away. But not everyone was smiling. In the third row, David's 16-year-old son Josh sat quietly. His hands were shaking. His eyes kept moving between his father and the big white arch where Melissa would soon walk through. He didn't smile. He didn't clap like the others. Something was wrong. And only Josh knew it. The music began. Everyone stood up. Melissa appeared, wearing a long white dress. She looked perfect. She smiled at everyone as she walked slowly down the aisle, holding a bouquet of white lilies. David's eyes filled with tears. He looked at her with love. For him, it was the start of a new life. But for Josh, it felt like the end. He remembered what he had seen just 3 nights ago. He had followed Melissa to a small cafe after she lied about going to the supermarket. She didn't know he was behind her. He saw her meet a man tall, with a black jacket and sunglasses. They sat close. They whispered. Josh couldn't hear everything, but one sentence froze him. After the wedding, we'll have access to everything. Josh had recorded it on his phone. Later, he saw Melissa take photos of David's business papers and send them to someone. Josh tried to tell his dad, but David was too busy with wedding plans. He thought Josh was just being jealous or didn't want a stepmother. Now, as Melissa walked toward his father, Josh's heart beat faster. He stood up suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. David frowned. Josh, what's wrong? Josh took a deep breath. His voice was loud and clear. Dad, don't marry her. She's lying to you. The entire wedding stopped. The music died. Melissa froze in her steps. Her smile disappeared. David looked shocked. What are you talking about? Josh stepped forward. She's hiding something. I saw her meeting a man. I heard them talking about stealing from you. I have a recording. The guests began whispering. Some gasped. Melissa's face turned red. She tried to laugh, but it came out nervous. He's just a child, she said. He doesn't want you to move on. He's scared. Josh pulled out his phone. I'm not lying. Listen to this. He played the recording. It was a little unclear, but the man's voice was heard. After the wedding, we'll have access to everything. Melissa's eyes widened. She stepped back. David looked confused. Melissa, what is this? Melissa walked quickly toward Josh. Give me the phone, she shouted. She tried to grab it, but Josh stepped away. Don't touch me. David stood between them. Melissa, stop. David, it's fake. He edited it. He hates me. Josh shouted. She went into your office. Dad, she took pictures of your legal files and sent them to that man. Check your phone logs. I saw everything. Melissa turned and ran. She didn't explain. She didn't defend herself anymore. She just ran right down the aisle, past the shocked guests, out of the wedding hall. David was frozen for a moment. Then he chased after her. Josh followed him. Everyone else stayed behind in silence, whispering and confused. Outside, Melissa jumped into a silver car parked nearby. It drove away fast. David stood there, breathing heavily. Why would she run, if she had nothing to hide? Josh looked at his father with sad eyes. I didn't want to ruin your day, but I had to stop you. David said nothing. His face was pale. His hands were shaking. His perfect day had turned into a nightmare. The wedding guests slowly came out. Some asked questions, others just left quietly. David turned to Josh. You said you had more proof. Josh nodded. Yes, I've been watching her for 2 weeks. I have photos, messages, even the numbers she's been calling. David looked at him, heartbroken. I almost married her, he whispered. Josh placed a hand on his father's shoulder. It's not your fault, Dad. She fooled everyone, but it's not too late to stop her. David took a deep breath. He nodded slowly. Come with me, he said. We're going to the police. The camera slowly zooms out on father and son, walking away from the broken wedding stage. The screen fades to black. David and Josh sat in silence inside the car as it moved through the quiet streets. The wedding that was supposed to be the happiest day of David's life had turned into a storm of confusion and betrayal. David kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was racing. Josh held his phone tightly in his hands, afraid to say more, afraid that his father might still be in shock. Finally, David spoke, his voice low and shaky. Are you sure about everything you saw, Josh? Josh nodded slowly. I wouldn't lie about this, Dad. I saw her meet that man twice, and both times she talked about getting access to your documents. David sighed heavily. He had trusted Melissa. She had helped him smile again after years of sadness. But now he felt nothing but pain. They arrived at the police station. David parked the car and looked at his son. Let's show them what you found. Inside the station, they met a calm officer named Officer Patel. David explained everything from the beginning while Josh played the audio recording again. The officer listened closely, his face serious. Then Josh showed the pictures he had taken Melissa in the office with David's files. Melissa speaking with the man at the cafe. Melissa hiding her phone quickly when Josh walked into the kitchen. Officer Patel nodded. This is serious. We can run a background check on her. What's her full name? Melissa Carter. David replied quietly. The officer typed quickly on the computer. After a few minutes, he looked up, his face now filled with concern. There's no Melissa Carter matching this photo or identity, but there is a woman who looks very similar named Rachel Mendez. She has a criminal record. Josh and David leaned forward. Criminal record? Josh asked. Yes, Officer Patel said. She's wanted for fraud in 2 states. Married 2 men. Both men reported her missing after she emptied their bank accounts and disappeared. Same method every time. David felt sick. His knees became weak. She was going to do the same to me. Josh held his father's hand. We stopped her, Dad. Just in time. Officer Patel stood up. We need to find her. Do you have any idea where she might go? Josh remembered something. She always kept a small bag in the closet. Maybe she had a backup plan. David nodded. She also used to get calls from a number that wasn't saved in her phone. It just said private. Officer Patel took notes. Let me get a team on this. We'll also check nearby motels. If she's running, she might be hiding close by for now. While the police began the search, David and Josh sat outside on a bench. The air was cool, but David was sweating. I almost married a criminal, Josh. I let her into our home, our lives. I feel like such a fool. Josh leaned his head on his father's shoulder. You're not a fool, Dad. You trusted her. That's what good people do. Hours passed. As evening fell, Officer Patel returned with news. We found her location. She's staying in a small motel outside town, room 12. David stood up. Can I come with you? The officer nodded. Actually, we might need your help. She may not open the door unless she trusts the person outside. Would you be willing to talk to her? Just long enough to keep her calm until we can move in. David hesitated. The thought of seeing Melissa again, now Rachel, made his stomach twist. But he nodded. For closure. And for justice. Josh stayed behind at the station as the police car drove away with David and 2 officers. At the motel, David walked up to the door of room 12 and knocked. Melissa opened the door slowly, her eyes wide with shock. David, she said softly. I thought you'd never speak to me again. David forced a smile. I needed answers. I need to understand why. Melissa opened the door wider. Come in. Inside, the room was messy. A suitcase was half packed, and a fake passport lay on the table. Melissa noticed David looking at it. I was scared, she said. When your son stood up like that, I didn't know what to do. David asked her calmly, why did you lie to me? Was it all fake? Melissa looked away. Not all of it. I did care, but I needed the money. My partner, he's dangerous. I couldn't leave him. Just then, the officers entered quickly. Melissa tried to run, but it was too late. They handcuffed her and read her rights. She screamed, cried, begged, but it was over. David stood in the corner, tears in his eyes. Why, Melissa? Why did you have to destroy everything? She said nothing. At the station later that night, Melissa confessed everything. Her real name was Rachel Mendez. She had been doing this for 5 years. Her partner planned everything while she acted sweet, innocent, and trustworthy. She told the police that David was her final target. His business accounts were enough for them to retire forever. Josh listened from the hallway. Even though he had saved his father's life and money, he didn't feel proud. He felt sad that someone could pretend to love and care while hiding such darkness inside. David came out of the interview room. His face looked tired, but his eyes met Josh's with gratitude. You were right, Josh. I should have listened to you from the beginning. Josh said softly, you didn't want to believe something that painful. I understand. They walked outside together into the quiet night. The stars were shining, and for the first time in weeks, David felt something true and pure, the love of his son who had stood up when no one else would. The next morning, the world felt different. The wedding decorations were still up, but no one was talking about love or celebration anymore. The guests had left quietly, and the house was silent. David sat at the kitchen table, staring at his cold coffee while Josh stood by the window, watching the sky turn gray with clouds. It had only been a day, but everything had changed. The police had taken Melissa, also known as Rachel Mendez, into custody, and her partner had been arrested just hours later. He had checked into a motel under a fake name, only a few miles away. Police found multiple fake documents, cash, and SIM cards in his room. Officer Patel called David early that morning. We have enough to charge them both. Identity fraud, theft, and conspiracy. Your son's evidence made the case strong. David thanked him, but his voice was weak. He felt like his trust had been stolen. Dad, are you okay? Josh asked, walking closer. David nodded slowly. I'm trying, son. I still can't believe she was lying from the start. I thought she was different. Josh sat down across from him. She fooled everyone. But I think deep down I always felt something was off. David looked at his son with soft eyes. I should have listened to you. You were trying to protect me. Josh shrugged. It's okay. I just didn't want to lose you to someone who didn't care. For the first time in days, David smiled. It was small and sad, but real. You didn't lose me, Josh. You saved me. Later that day, David received a call from a lawyer. Melissa had tried to transfer ownership of one of David's properties. Days before the wedding, she forged documents using fake signatures. The lawyer caught it, but was waiting for verification. Now, everything made sense. David and Josh went to the station to sign more papers and give final statements. Melissa was being transferred to another facility for trial. She didn't ask to see David. She didn't ask for mercy. She just sat in silence, eyes empty, as if all her masks had finally fallen off. Outside the station, cameras had gathered. News of the wedding interruption had spread fast. Man saved by teenage son from wedding scam, read one headline. Reporters waited outside, but David avoided them. Josh looked at his father. We don't have to talk to anyone. David nodded. Let's go home. At home, David sat in his study and stared at a photo on the wall, a picture of his late wife. She had passed away 5 years earlier. I tried to move on, he whispered, but I moved in the wrong direction. Josh stood behind him. You were just trying to be happy again. There's nothing wrong with that. David turned to him. You know, Josh, sometimes I forget how grown up you are. You've been more of a man than I ever was these past few days. Josh looked down, embarrassed. I was just scared. I didn't know what else to do. And you still did the right thing, David said, placing a hand on his shoulder. I'm proud of you. That night, they sat together watching a movie. For the first time in weeks, there was laughter in the house. It was quiet, but it was healing. The next morning, something unexpected happened. A woman named Claire came to the house. She was one of Melissa's previous victims. She had seen the news and recognized her face. David welcomed her inside. Claire shared her story. Melissa had used a different name back then, but the lies were the same. Sweet words, promises of love, and then the sudden disappearance with money gone. Claire had never told anyone. She was ashamed. But after seeing Josh's bravery, she decided to speak out. You did what none of us could, she told him. You stopped her. Josh felt strange hearing that. He had never thought of himself as brave. David looked at Claire. We should take this further. Help others who may be hiding their stories. Claire agreed. Over the next few days, David and Claire connected with other victims. Josh started writing online about what had happened using simple words so other kids his age could understand. If something feels wrong, speak up, he wrote. Even if no one listens at first, your voice still matters. The post went viral. Hundreds of people shared their own experiences. Some had been scammed. Some had seen it happen to their parents. Many thanked Josh for giving them courage. David watched it all with pride. He no longer felt broken. He felt rebuilt. Not because everything was perfect, but because he had faced the truth and survived it. One evening, while walking in the park, David turned to Josh. You know, maybe this was all meant to happen. Maybe this was a warning before something worse. Josh nodded. Maybe we were just lucky. David shook his head gently. No, we weren't lucky, we were strong. You were strong. The wind blew softly. Trees moved above them, and the sky turned orange with the setting sun. Josh felt peaceful. He had lost his trust in adults for a while, but now he had gained something better, real respect from his father. And David had learned something too. Love should never make you blind. It should open your eyes. The story didn't end with a kiss or a wedding, but with something more powerful. A father and son walking together side by side. Hearts open and lessons learned. Days passed, but the memory of that wedding day stayed fresh in David's mind. He kept thinking about how close he had come to making the biggest mistake of his life. Every corner of the house reminded him of Melissa, from the vase she picked for the living room to the coffee mug she used every morning. But now those things felt fake, just like her smile. David boxed up her belongings and placed them in the garage. Josh helped silently, knowing his father needed to move on. One evening, as they sat quietly, David turned to Josh. Do you think I'll ever trust anyone again? Josh looked at him seriously. You will, but not right away, and not without reason. You'll be more careful this time. David gave a soft nod. I hope so. That same night, David received an email from a detective handling Melissa's case. The police had uncovered a list of names and bank details on her partner's phone. It appeared they had more targets. David and Josh stared at the screen. How many people were they planning to scam? Josh asked. Too many, David replied. The detective wanted David to come in and identify certain documents. Josh went along again. At the station, the detective showed them the list. David's name was second from the top. Underneath his name were notes like owns property, widowed, and easy to manipulate emotionally. Reading that made David's hands tremble. He realized how deeply Melissa and her partner had planned to use his pain against him. She studied me, David whispered. I was just a target to her. Josh placed a hand on his father's arm. But you're more than that now. You're someone who didn't let it happen. The detective gave them a box of returned items, things Melissa had taken from David's house without him knowing. Inside were business files, copies of personal letters, and even pictures of Josh. She was watching us, Josh said in shock. I thought she just wanted to marry you, but she was spying on our lives. David looked at the pictures. He remembered the way she had asked about Josh's school and his routines. It all felt so real at the time, but now it was clear. She was collecting information. She never loved me, David said quietly. She just loved what I had. The detective gave them one more update. Melissa's partner had confessed that they had been planning to leave the country after the wedding. Everything was ready. Tickets were booked. Fake identities were created. They just needed the final step: access to David's accounts. She would have taken everything, David said. The house, the business, even my savings. But she didn't. Josh reminded him. Because we stopped her. On the way home, David was quiet. The streets felt colder, the air heavier, but he wasn't afraid. He was just thinking. You know what I regret the most? He finally asked. Not the money, not the house, but the fact that I let her get close to you. Josh turned to him. She didn't hurt me, Dad. You protected me just like I protected you. David smiled weakly. Still, I wish I had seen her clearly before all this. That weekend, Claire visited again with 2 more women who had also been victims of Melissa. They sat in the living room sharing stories. Each one had been tricked, in a different way. Melissa had changed names, but her method was always the same. Be charming, be sweet, and disappear with everything. Josh listened quietly. He noticed how each woman still carried guilt even though they had done nothing wrong. She made me feel special, one woman said. I thought I was finally seen. Another added she never raised her voice. She was kind even when lying. That's what made it so dangerous. David spoke finally. We all want love, but love shouldn't make you feel weak, or small, or confused. Claire nodded. It should feel honest, even when it's hard. After they left, Josh had an idea. Why don't we do something more? Something that helps other people spot lies before it's too late. David raised an eyebrow. Like what? Like a podcast? Or a YouTube channel? We can share these stories and warn others. David paused. That's actually not a bad idea. They began planning it together. Josh wrote scripts using simple words. David reached out to professionals, therapists, legal experts, and even retired detectives who could speak on the show. They called the channel Truth Before Trust. In the first video, Josh shared their story. Not for sympathy but to teach others how dangerous charm can be. The video went viral. Thousands commented. Some shared how they had been saved after watching. Others admitted they were still healing. David read every message. Each one reminded him why they had to keep going. Meanwhile, Melissa's trial date was set. The days after the trial felt different. There was no more fear, no more secrets hiding in the house. David and Josh could finally breathe. But even with Melissa behind bars, the pain she left behind still lingered. Trust was not something that healed overnight. Every time the phone rang or a stranger smiled too kindly, David paused. He didn't know if it was habit or trauma. Josh noticed it too. The way his father would check the locks twice before bed, or how he read emails 3 times before replying. Melissa may have been gone, but the cracks she left behind were still visible. Josh continued working on the YouTube channel. Their latest video had crossed 1 million views. More stories kept coming in. People from different places, different lives, all fooled by someone who wore a kind face. Some were men, some were women, some were old, some were young. But all had one thing in common: they didn't see it coming. David was shocked by how many people were suffering in silence. He had once thought he was alone, embarrassed by how easily he had been tricked. But now he realized being kind-hearted wasn't weakness. It was just easily abused by the wrong people. One evening, they received a message from a girl named Lily. She was only 19 and had been dating a man 10 years older. He had promised her a good life, love, and support. But he slowly isolated her from her friends and asked for money, saying he had debts. She sent everything she had saved. Then one day he disappeared. Lily's voice shook as she spoke through a voice note. I thought I was the only stupid one, she said. But your story helped me see I wasn't alone. David sat in silence after hearing it. We can't stop, he said. We have to keep sharing these stories. People need to know the signs. Josh agreed. They created a new series called Red Flags, where each episode broke down simple warning signs: lying about the past, love bombing, asking for money, guilt tripping, avoiding questions. They made it easy to understand, using examples from real stories. The comments section filled with people saying they finally understood what had happened to them. One day, David was invited to speak at a local school. At first he was unsure. What do I tell them? He asked Josh. I'm just a man who made a mistake. Josh smiled. No, you're a man who fixed it. That's more important. So David went. He stood in front of 50 students and told them the truth about love, about loss, about how charm can be dangerous when it's used to hide lies. He kept his voice simple, his words honest. And at the end, every single student clapped. A few even walked up to thank him, saying they would go home and talk to their parents about things they were afraid to share before. That night, David felt proud not because he was strong, but because he had turned pain into something helpful. At home, he and Josh made tea and talked like old friends. They laughed about silly things, shared jokes, and watched videos together. The tension that once filled the house had been replaced by something warmer: trust. But healing was still a journey. One afternoon, David received a letter. It was from Melissa, handwritten. Josh watched him open it, his hands slightly trembling. Inside, Melissa wrote about how she never expected to be caught, how she had done this for years and never looked back. But this time, something was different. Your son reminded me of who I used to be, she wrote. A person who believed in right and wrong. I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know he made me see myself again, for the first time in years. David didn't know how to feel. He read the letter twice and then placed it in a drawer. He didn't tell the police. He didn't want revenge. He only wanted peace. Later that evening, Josh asked, Do you regret meeting her? David thought for a long time before answering. If I say yes, I lose the lesson. If I say no, it sounds like I wanted this to happen, I guess. I don't regret it, because I learned something important, but I'll never forget it either. Josh nodded slowly. Sometimes the worst people teach us the best lessons. David smiled. And sometimes the bravest people are the ones we least expect. Life began to feel normal again. David started working on his business with more focus. Josh was invited to speak at a youth center about emotional awareness and trusting instincts. Their bond grew stronger every day. There was no longer a wall of silence between them. They shared their fears, their doubts, their victories. David even began seeing a counselor, something he never thought he'd do. It helped him understand how deeply he had been affected and how to rebuild his confidence. One evening, as the sun set, they sat on the porch watching the sky turn orange. David turned to Josh. You know, I thought I was protecting you from the world, but it turns out you were protecting me. Josh laughed. We protected each other. The wind was soft, and the world felt calm for once. There was no chaos, no lies, just two hearts healing side by side. The past had tried to break them, but they had turned it into something strong. Truth, love, and a voice for those still trapped in silence. The story that began with a wedding was now changing lives far beyond their home, and it wasn't over yet. It was just the beginning. Weeks passed and life began to settle into a gentle rhythm again. David focused more on his business, and Josh continued to work on their YouTube channel. Each new video brought more stories from people around the world. Some of them were heartbreaking and some were inspiring. Together they were building something bigger than they ever imagined. One morning David received a message from the police. A new suspect had been connected to Melissa's case. It was someone they hadn't identified before, a woman who had helped create false IDs and clean stolen money. She had been working silently in the background while Melissa and her partner carried out the scams. Her name was Amanda Gray and she was still on the run. David's heart dropped. He thought it was over, but now another piece of the puzzle was showing itself. He didn't tell Josh right away. He didn't want to worry him, unless it was serious. But by evening, Josh noticed something was wrong. You're quiet today, he said. David hesitated but then told him everything. Josh listened carefully. Do you think she'll come here? He asked. I don't know, David replied, but I don't want to take any chances. That night they double-checked the locks and made sure the security system was working. It felt like they had taken 10 steps forward and were suddenly pulled 2 steps back. The next day, Officer Patel visited their house with a small team. They installed a temporary security camera outside and advised David to be cautious. This woman Amanda is smart, the officer said. She disappears before we even get close. But we believe she's watching those connected to the case, especially the ones who helped expose the others. David nodded slowly. That means me and Josh. Officer Patel agreed. Yes, that's why we need you to stay alert. If anything strange happens, report it immediately. After the officers left, Josh sat with his laptop. Should we stop the videos for a while? He asked. David looked at him for a moment. Do you want to stop? Josh shook his head. No, I just don't want to put you in danger. David smiled. You didn't put me in danger. You saved me, and what we're doing is important. We're helping people. We can't let fear stop us now. That night, Josh uploaded a new video. It was a little different this time. Instead of telling someone else's story, he spoke directly to the camera. Sometimes the people who hurt us leave more than scars, he said. They leave fear. They leave doubt, but we have to keep speaking, because silence is where they hide. The video gained thousands of views within hours. People commented that his words gave them strength. Survivors of scams and emotional abuse shared how they had always blamed themselves but now felt seen. A few days later, something strange happened. A black car was parked across the street. It wasn't familiar. It didn't move for hours. David noticed it first. He wrote down the plate number and called Officer Patel. The officer ran the number and called back an hour later. It belongs to a rental company, no registered name, likely used under false documents. That was enough to make them both nervous. Josh closed all the blinds and kept his phone close. They didn't leave the house unless it was important, but even then they kept looking over their shoulders. One evening David stepped outside to get the mail. He noticed an envelope without a stamp. It was placed gently on top of the mailbox. His name was written in neat handwriting. He opened it quickly and read the short note inside. You should have stayed quiet. We don't forget. David's hands went cold. He rushed inside and showed it to Josh. Josh's face went pale. Is this from Amanda? David nodded. It has to be. He called Officer Patel, who arrived in less than 30 minutes. He collected the note as evidence and promised to increase patrol in the area. She's trying to scare you, the officer said. But she's slipping. Leaving notes means she's close, and that's a mistake. The police began a search of the surrounding area. Josh and David were advised to stay in a hotel under a different name for a few days. In the hotel room, Josh stared at the ceiling. Unable to sleep? Why do they want to keep hurting people even when they've already been caught? David didn't have an answer. He sat beside his son and said, Some people build their lives around lies. When the truth comes out, it threatens everything they've built. Josh nodded slowly. Then maybe our truth is more powerful than we thought. The next morning, Officer Patel called again. They had located Amanda. The morning after Amanda's arrest, the sun rose with a quiet calm over the neighborhood. For the first time in months, the silence felt peaceful, not threatening. David stood by the kitchen window sipping his coffee, watching the birds flutter. Near the fence, Josh sat at the table typing notes for their next video. Though everything had changed around them, they were beginning to feel normal again. Not the old normal, but something new, something better, one built on truth, pain, healing, and strength. David's phone buzzed with a new message. It was from Officer Patel. Amanda has agreed to testify. She's naming other people involved. The case may be bigger than we thought. David read the message aloud. Josh paused and looked up. So there are more like her? David nodded. It looks like Melissa and Amanda weren't working alone. They were part of something larger. Maybe a ring of scammers using fake identities, targeting vulnerable people like me. Josh sat back, stunned. How deep does this go? David wasn't sure, but he knew they had just scratched the surface. They had believed Melissa's arrest ended everything. Then Amanda appeared. Now more names were surfacing. It wasn't just about one woman or one scam. It was a pattern, organized, careful, and dangerous. Later that afternoon, they visited the police station to review more evidence. Officer Patel greeted them with a tight expression. We've found messages, financial trails. They were using romance, business deals, and charity events to reach their targets. Melissa's wedding to you, David, was just one tactic. Their goal was always the same: gain trust, then take everything. David sat down slowly, and I almost gave them what they wanted. Josh leaned forward, but we stopped them. And now others won't fall for it either. Officer Patel showed them a map with red pins across the state, each one representing a person who had filed a similar report over the past 3 years. Most didn't have enough proof. Some were too ashamed to speak. You two helped us connect the dots. Josh felt a rush of emotion. What started as a terrifying experience had turned into a fight for justice. They weren't just victims anymore. They were part of something meaningful. Back home, David opened his laptop. I want to do something more, Josh. Not just videos? Something real. Something long-lasting. Josh tilted his head. Like what? A foundation, David said. One that offers legal help and emotional support to scam victims. Especially those too scared or embarrassed to ask for help. Josh lit up. That's a great idea. And we can run workshops, maybe even school sessions. Teach people how to protect themselves. They started planning that night. Within a few days, their project had a name. The Second Look Foundation, a place for people who needed a second chance after being fooled, manipulated, or hurt. They reached out to lawyers, counselors, and survivors willing to share their stories. The word spread quickly. People wrote to them from all over the country. Some wanted to volunteer, others just wanted someone to listen. David and Josh spent hours replying to emails, organizing meetings, and learning how to run a nonprofit. It wasn't easy. There were setbacks, delays, and people who didn't take them seriously, but they didn't give up. One evening, while preparing for an online seminar, David received another message, this time from Claire, one of Melissa's previous victims. I'm ready, she wrote. I want to tell my story live. Claire had been scared at first, worried about judgment or pity, but watching Josh speak with courage had inspired her. In the live session, she spoke slowly but clearly, sharing how Melissa entered her life pretending to be a friend, then took money and disappeared. The comments section filled with support and love. After the call, Claire messaged David privately. You helped me find my voice again. David read the message and felt something shift inside. This was bigger than Melissa, bigger than Amanda. It was about breaking silence, about helping others reclaim their power. Meanwhile, Josh received an email from his school counselor. She had been watching his videos and wanted him to speak at the school assembly. We need more boys like you talking about emotions, instincts, and courage, she wrote. Josh hesitated at first. Standing in front of classmates was scarier than talking to a camera. But David encouraged him. You've already faced more than most adults. You can do this. The day of the assembly, Josh stood on stage with shaky hands, but once he started speaking, his fear melted away. I didn't save my dad because I was brave, he said. I saved him because I was scared and because I spoke up anyway. The room fell silent. Then loud applause filled the hall. Students came up after, thanking him, some even crying. One boy whispered, my mom's dating someone like that. Now I know I need to tell her. Word reached the local news, and soon their foundation was featured in a short documentary. Reporters filmed David and Josh at home, at the office, and in community meetings. The final video ended with a shot of the two standing outside their house, the same house Melissa once tried to steal, but now it stood stronger than ever. That night, David stood in the backyard looking at the stars. Josh joined him. Funny how everything changed. Huh, Josh said. David smiled. Yet, we lost something, but we found something better. Like what? Josh asked. Truth, strength, and each other. Josh nodded. Yeah, and now we're helping others find it too. The wind blew gently. The lights inside their home glowed warm behind them. They had walked through betrayal, fear, and loss but had emerged as more than survivors. They were protectors. Now, and their story was far from over. Months passed, and what began as a nightmare had transformed into something powerful. The Second Look Foundation was now fully active, helping dozens of people every week. The YouTube channel continued to grow, with each video telling a new stories of betrayal, courage, and healing. David and Josh became known not just in their city, but across the country. They were invited to talk shows, news, interviews, and online panels. People respected them not because they were perfect, but because they had turned pain into purpose. David sat at his desk one morning reading a letter. It was from a woman named Eliza, a widow who had nearly lost everything, to a man who claimed to be a military veteran. "Your story saved me," the letter said. "I watched your video the night before. I was going to send him money. I stopped myself. I don't know how to thank you." David folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box. That box was now full of letters, emails, and handwritten notes from people who had been helped by their voice. He looked out the window and smiled, the morning sun touching his face. This was healing. Josh had changed. He was no longer the quiet boy who doubted himself. He was now confident, thoughtful, and deeply respected by everyone around him. At school, students often came to him for advice. Teachers praised him not just for his courage but for his kindness. He didn't brag, he didn't seek attention. He just wanted others to feel safe. One Saturday morning, they held their biggest seminar yet, a live community event, with over 200 people attending in person, and thousands more watching online. Claire was one of the guest speakers, along with 2 other survivors. A therapist gave tips on emotional recovery, and a retired FBI agent spoke about identifying online scams. But the most powerful moment came when David and Josh walked onto the stage together. David looked at the crowd and began, "I used to think strength meant never being fooled. I used to think I was weak because I let someone trick me, but I've learned that real strength is standing up again after you fall, and real bravery." That's when my son stood up in front of 100 people at a wedding and told the truth. Josh took a deep breath and continued, "I was scared that day. I thought maybe no one would believe me, but I learned something very important. Your voice matters, even when it shakes, even when it makes people uncomfortable. If you stay silent, the wrong people win." The crowd stood up and clapped, some with tears in their eyes. After the event, many people came to hug them, shake their hands, and share their own stories. Some just wanted to say thank you. That evening, back at home, Josh sat on the couch holding a photo of his mother. "I think she'd be proud," he said. David sat beside him and nodded. "She always said you had something special. She'd be proud of the man you're becoming." They sat in silence for a while, just feeling the weight and peace of everything they had walked through. Then came the unexpected. One evening, Officer Patel called. "You might want to sit down for this," he said. Melissa written a confession, a full one, names, dates, everything, and she asked if we could share it with you. David was stunned. "Why now?" he asked. "She says she's tired of running inside her own head. She's seen what you've done. She said it made her think. We don't know if it's guilt or manipulation, but the confession checks out." A week later, David received a thick envelope. Inside was Melissa's full written confession. It detailed how she was recruited, how she learned to study people's emotions, how she trained herself to act exactly like what her targets wanted. She wrote, "I used to think love was a tool, but now I see love as the very thing I never understood. I hurt people because I never knew how to be real. I watched your son, and for the first time, I saw something pure. I can't undo the past, but I hope one day you'll understand I wasn't just fooling you. I was fooling myself too." David read the letter twice. Then he put it back in the envelope.